a very different landscape emerges. This is Bullneck Swamp. It used to be logging territory when timber companies exploited its forest for Atlantic white cedar. Salvation came in 1996 when Carolina State University purchased the parcel for use as a wetlands research site. Today, the Bullneck Swamp Research Forest also serves as a refuge for animal species like coyotes, black bears, and white-tailed deer. About 75 miles southwest of the swamp lies the second oldest city in North Carolina, New Bern. Named after the capital of Switzerland, it was first settled by Swiss and German immigrants in the early 1700s, in the earliest days of the colony. It was here where William Tryon, royal governor of North Carolina at the time, decided to build a permanent capital. He called it Tryon Palace. Completed in 1770, the elaborate Georgian-style mansion served as both a government building and as Tryon's personal residence. Though the colonists weren't too happy about paying higher taxes so their governor could live in opulence, ultimately, Tryon, state capital of an independent North Carolina, the original palace went up in flames. This house is a replica built in the 1950s from the architect's original plans. By the mid-19th century, the port city of New Bern had grown into the second largest city on the North Carolina coast, a strategic target for the North during the Civil War. In early 1862, Union General Ambrose Burnside marched decisively into town, overpowered the woefully unprepared Confederate troops, and occupied New Bern for the remainder of the war. Several decades after the war's end, New Bern became the birthplace of an American icon. Here on Middle Street, a young druggist named Caleb Bradham opened a small pharmacy with a soda fountain that served a... He named it Pepsi-Cola. When North Carolina's statesmen decided to move the capital away from New Bern, they chose a spot very different from the bustling city on the coast. In 1792, the state legislature sent a committee on a mission to scout sites for a new capital. At the time, Raleigh, in the state's Piedmont region, was nothing but a lonely outpost. But State Senator Joel Lane had a 1,000-acre plantation for sale here, and he was a terrific salesman. He graciously took the committee members to a local tavern, where they indulged in a popular libation called Cherry Bounce. Legend has it that they didn't realize until the next morning that they had agreed to buy Lane's land. The new capital was named after Sir Walter Raleigh, who'd sent the first colonists to North Carolina in the 16th century. The city itself was modeled after Philadelphia, which at the time was the capital of the United States. In the middle of the city, a splendid great portico and massive columns were all carved from locally quarried granite. To get the giant slabs to the building site, engineers developed a special wooden track railway with mule-drawn cars. The first stone went into place in the summer of 1833, and the building was completed 7 years later. Inside these walls, in 1861, after a heated debate, state legislators made the most important decision of their careers, voting in favor of secession. The decision was met with great celebration. Just 4 years later, the Union Army stormed into town, defeated the Confederates, and occupied Raleigh. The Southern capital was never the same again. Modern-day Raleigh is one of the fastest-growing cities in the United States, thanks in large part to the work going on here at Research Triangle Park. Founded in 1959, RTP is a 7,000-acre campus where researchers, policymakers, and businesses collaborate on all kinds of scientific and high-tech research. 3D ultrasound technology was developed here, as well as the groundbreaking HIV/AIDS drug, AZT. Modern architecture may sprawl through Raleigh's high-tech hubs, but Victorian buildings seem to be straight from the 19th century. It wasn't that long ago that this neighborhood was in disrepair. After World War II, middle-class families began fleeing the city for the suburbs, abandoning their once fashionable homes. But in the early 1970s, the tide began to turn back, and a few renovations inspired a wave of neighborhood revitalization. Locals call the area between Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill the Triangle. These aren't just the biggest cities in the area. They're also home to 3 prominent universities: North Carolina State, Duke, and the University of North Carolina. Each school has different academic strengths, but they all share one thing in common. Within the last 30 years, each has won the NCAA Men's Basketball Championship at least once. Duke University, formerly known as Trinity College, was born in rural Randolph County in the mid-19th century. Then, in 1892, a wealthy tobacco farmer named Washington Duke offered up $85,000 to have the college moved here to Durham. He considered this city an emblem of the progressive New South and a much more fitting place for the growing school. In the 1920s, Duke's son James continued in his father's footsteps, providing the $19 million that Trinity College needed to expand into a university.